Hello, welcome to Sterlo's Wrap.
Oh, straight run!
Bang, take advantage of it.
Oh, standard applause!
It's a stupid question.
It's
I
not.
have far greater expectations of you than that.
Oh, yes. He's gone all the way.
Now, he's popular, he's a great leader, he's the mentality of this football team.
Oh, and another one from Cleary.
Well, it doesn't get much better, does it?
Absolutely outstanding, and the finish is just as good.
It's rugby league, isn't it?
Hello, welcome to Sterlo's Wrap. We're in grand final week 2021. Panthers versus Rabbitohs after another memorable weekend of finals footy. The first time, Peter Sterling, since 2015, the grand final won't feature Melbourne or Rooster.
It's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, it's nice to see some new clubs up there, and deservedly so. And, Matt, it's so important to get our grand final week right. I don't want you distracted during the week out. I want you to stay with the same routine and same preparation, ready to go next week.
Yep.
Because that's important this week, right?
Rabs is caught in the grand final, so I've got nothing to do.
Well,
I'll just sit around and eat chocolate.
Rabs is always a bit like he's had every illness known to man. You never know when Rabs could go down.
He's been going all right for 50 years. I think he'll be okay this week. Now, later in our wrap, you're going to do your season awards. Most improved, Rookie of the Year.
And most valuable.
And most valuable player of the year. Tough.
You've
been doing some prep.
Yes and no. Some absolute standouts, but in the end I didn't find that too difficult.
All right.
But
Actually,
plenty of contenders.
Now I think about it, it probably wasn't that hard, was it?
Well, no, not for...
In fact, here we go. All right, let's talk about the games. What a cracker. Penrith 10, Melbourne 6. I had the rare pleasure of watching a game on the lounge at home yesterday, and I could not look away. An unbelievable game. I reckon that first half might be the best half of footy maybe I've ever seen. Well, certainly this year. It was just unbelievable.
It was enthralling.
Yeah.
And I've adored what I've seen from Penrith in the last couple of weeks. And I mentioned on the Sunday Footy Show, I think our season needed these kind of games. In a year where we've seen so many points scored, so many big scores, so many blowout scores, to see some real finals football in regards to keeping their line intact with some heroic pieces of defence has just been fantastic. And Penrith go through to the grand final on the back of what they've done without the football, and especially against this Melbourne team who were out of sorts but had their opportunities. And if you're going to beat Melbourne, it's about the tries that you stop more than the ones that you concede. Now, this is one that George Jennings had to gobble up and score in the corner. Wonderful pass from Jerome Hughes. But just look at these kind of efforts. Kamakamita almost gets to the line. These are early in the first half where they're looking to get some ascendancy. Pappenhausen finds Olam. He gets dragged down. In fact, he gets over the line because we come back for a 10-metre restart there. And look at the chase here of Scott Sorensen, pretty much on one leg. Now, he's not slow, Jerome Hughes, but Sorensen and Fisher Harris comes across and saves the day once again. They're just examples of what you've got to do to beat Melbourne, and on each occasion Penrith found the desire, found the want, found the execution to stop the opponents from scoring, who ultimately only scored one try from a pretty deft little kick from Cameron Munster. But outside of that, the defensive effort from Penrith was fantastic. Melbourne would be very, very disappointed, certainly with their completion rate or lack of.
It was very uncharacteristic.
Very much so. But again...
I think they made 16 errors in the game. Well, they wouldn't do that in 3 games.
No, but you look at it, how much... Like, you're always going to have forced errors, but the amount of unforced errors was very, very un-Melbourne-like.
How much of it was because of this hustling defence and line speed? Because they were relentless with their line speed, Penrith.
Oh, well, that's got to come into the equation, doesn't it? I think, a lot of the errors had to do with the fact that they had Penrith players in their face, and those Penrith players in their face were hitting hard.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was a really physical encounter once again. And as it turned out, I think that the effort against Parramatta in a similar game the previous week, it put Penrith in really good stead in this game. They're the youngest team in the final series, and I think the energy and the enthusiasm through that youth and the experience that so many of them picked up in Origin this year, it's really helped them in these kind of games because they just look so strong in games that were absolutely tiring and had so much fatigue.
Yeah. Let's have a look at some of the key moments within that game. We'll sort of start in a chronological order. The Christian Welch one was interesting. When the head knock occurred, the trainer asked for the game to be stopped, yet Welch didn't leave the field. Now, I haven't seen an explanation from the NRL on why that didn't occur. I mean, this whole notion of stopping the game has been one that we've seen repeatedly over the last few weeks in particular. But Penrith still didn't panic.
No, they didn't. And this was mid-count. And it was quite a lengthy break. And teams with the football can lose their way, but they had their head on. Penrith, they summed up the situation. Okay, we haven't got rhythm out of the previous 3 plays, but what do we do now? So Nathan Cleary goes into dummy half. It was revealed after the game that they looked at the Roosters scoring a try, I think in round 6, with James Tedesco doing exactly that, kicking over to the corner to score the try. The Roosters had noted that they play such a compact defence, Melbourne, so Josh Adokar was something like 20, 25 metres off his line. But to get it all done in that instance, after a break in play, to get Cleary into dummy half, straight away everybody's on side. But if you have a look at Nathan Cleary, he has one look and he takes one step. So it is bang, bang. And where he lands it was absolutely perfect. So the execution, the planning was first class, and it just took everybody by surprise, no one more so than the Melbourne defensive effort.
Thought it was a great coaching effort from Ivan Cleary all round yesterday to get his team up after, like you say, a classic against Parramatta. And they lost in the opening round. Like, they've had now 3 brutal finals in succession, but the way they played, it was very smart. Yeah, moving the defence around, and he's pulled Craig Bellamy's pants down there with a trick play.
Well, I really did think that the afternoon game and the dry service probably helped both sides, but I think Penrith maybe even more so, because they really like to have the football humming. And look, there was a setback obviously early on with losing Welsh and Brandon Smith.
Yes, very much.
And that affected their rotation. Brandon Smith is such a valuable player for them because after 20, 25 minutes, Harry Grant normally comes on. Brandon Smith goes back to number 13, and you can afford to carry a Pappenhausen and a Grant off the bench. With Brandon Smith leaving and not having that flexibility in the rotation, they kind of were a forward short. But you don't know that. You can't really plan for that. But it certainly didn't help hurt Penrith's chances.
Yes. I felt for Kurt Capewell, who dropped that ball with about 3 minutes to go, and everyone's thinking, oh, Melbourne... There was still the chance that Melbourne, despite being totally outplayed, could win that at the death. That's how good a side they are.
It can be a really cruel game because I thought Kurt Capewell was the best player in the field. And if anybody didn't deserve to give the opponents the last chance, it was this man here. I thought some of his efforts running the football out from his own line, where there wasn't too many others lining up to do so, was just phenomenal. But defensively, some of the key tackles he made, the significant tackles, were profound. There's one a little bit later on where I think Pappenhausen gets through. Here it is here. He comes across now and makes that tackle, forces an error. Again, Brisbane have brought quality in Kurt Capewell.
He's a big game player now. I mean, he's won a premiership, played in the grand final last year, played Origin 2 years in a row, played out of position in that Queensland team a couple of series back, and in fact the first couple of games of this series, and did a good job. So it shouldn't be any great surprise because he's performed at that level.
No, and for some reason he probably doesn't carry the profile of some of the other forward, like Kikau. When we talk about Kikau, you're thinking left side, huge, unstoppable type thing. Isaiah Yeo, deservedly, is getting plenty of plaudits for his leadership and his ball play. Kurt Capewell has kind of got under the radar a little bit because Liam Martin has been, sort of spoken about, especially with his Origin heroics also. So, I thought he was the best player in the field, but that was my view, and you could have had 7 other picks and you'd be valid in that decision. Still
talking about the forwards, Tavita Pangai started for the Panthers with Moses Leota ruled out. He's got his own issue with injury. James Fisher-Harris, his output was down yesterday because of injury. So there's a few little knocks, which I'm sure every team would expect to have at this stage of the year, but particularly in that front row area where Penrith have just... I wouldn't say they've struggled for depth, but they are a bit thin if they get a couple of injuries.
Well, they've got some leg injuries in there, and the last couple of weeks we haven't seen Kikau play a lot of time. Pangai Jr. starting this game was very, very good, and pointed out, his signing could actually be the masterstroke of the year to come in for the last couple of games and have the impact that he's had, especially when there is a question mark on some of the other forwards. It'll be a waiting game in regards to Moses Leota. Will he come in? And if he does, that will have an effect. Do they start kicking off the bench again? Do they start Pangai Jr.? That will be decisions that need to be made basically based on the health situation. Brian Toto still looked proppy to me,
he did,
despite the fact he ran over 200 metres in this game. I want to give a rap to Spencer Leniu. Spencer Leniu was very, very good. He was kept back in the game quite late, and his leg speed really made a difference. When the side was looking for a lift, which is what you're looking for off your interchange bench, I thought he really provided that. He's a guy, probably had some disappointment of late because he was in their 17 last year pretty much every week. Has been on the periphery more so this season, but I've got no doubt that the Penrith players and Ivan Cleary, if Leniu is part of the 17 next week, they won't have any qualms about him being there. Of course, he'll get the job done for you.
Speaking of impact off the bench, how good was Big Nelson for Melbourne yesterday? What a performance.
They're still filling in the hole from when he did the swan dive for the no try, but yeah, he was great.
That was just powerhouse.
And again, he probably had to have more of a contribution. Nelson is very much a get in there, have a like 10, 15, 20 minutes, bang, go. He was out there longer, so he had to deal with more tiredness. But, he was, well, mate, when you look like that and built like that, you should be able to do that as well.
Last one. You worried at all about the form of Kikau? In attack, he's obviously a great asset to any team. Defensively, though, I think he missed 5 or 6 tackles yesterday, and Melbourne sort of sensed they might be able to get at him in certain positions. Is that a worry?
Look, he's not as healthy as you'd like, and then it's not only the ankle injury, but severe laceration. So he had a couple of concerns coming into this game. Viliama Kikau is still the kind of player, despite maybe not being at his best the next couple of weeks, who could get a Clive Churchill medal next week and be the difference between the sides. So you'd rather be playing with him than against him.
No doubt.
And if he's out there for a short period of time, it'll be a telling period in the game.
All right. The first of the grand final qualifier saw South Sydney go through over Manly, 36 points to 16. The Seagulls had a lot of chances despite not having a lot of ball, if you know what I mean. In fact, they crossed the South Sydney line twice in the opening half and had them knocked back by the bunker. I wonder if that's one little element of concern for South Sydney, but apart from that, they did it pretty well. Yeah,
I thought it was an unusual first 40 minutes because South Sydney dominated, and they did that on the back of 65% possession, high completion, and Manly were way off and hardly got down the other end of the field. But as you point out, they got down there twice, and on both occasions crossed the line for no result. They got this call right. You can argue the hole that they ran through, but the onus is on the attacking player not to make contact, and Moses Sully does with Adam Reynolds. Yes, it might have been wider. And Tom Trbojevic here, he scores. That's, if he gets that close, he scores tries. So you've got to give a great rap there to the 3 South Sydney defenders who at least got themselves in the picture. They scored some tries late, which enhanced the scoreline. But I've said a couple of times, at 22-0, I thought that it was actually a skinny lead for the amount of footy that South Sydney had.
Especially when Manly scored first after half-time.
They scored after 4.5 minutes, and I honestly thought, here we go.
Yeah.
It is game on. But these errors on the back of that try really cruelled them. They didn't have the scoreboard pressure at that stage to be playing that type of footy. They got back, they got the first try. You didn't have to score again in the next couple of minutes, And I thought that they probably showed some inexperience there in that they just didn't, after getting the necessary points, they just didn't take a little bit of a breath and say, OK, we've got 35 minutes.
There's a bit of panic about it, wasn't there?
Yeah, it was too extravagant and it was too frantic at that stage for what was needed at the time. And South Sydney, they took advantage of that. When they started to run in some more points, the game was over, despite the fact that the Manly side grabbed a couple of late.
One thing we know better than most in rugby league, Peter, is it's very hard to keep a secret. No one knew about Adam Reynolds.
No.
How'd they keep that one to themselves?
I looked out there for the first conversion and looked at Blake Taft kicking and thought, well, what's going on here? Now, he got it off the post, but this was an indication that Adam Reynolds had a problem, and that's backed up by the fact that you'll see here early in the game, it was Cody Walker.
I don't reckon he had a kick for the first half an hour.
No. So that's a real concern next week, and we might touch on that. But in this game, Adam Reynolds warmed into it and did start to take on some of the kicking, but it's a struck match between he and Nathan Cleary as to who is the best kicker in general play. But even goal kicking, like Blake Taft obviously is an adequate kicker, but if I want somebody to win a grand final for me with possibly a sideline conversion, I'm putting Adam Reynolds in front of everybody. If they needed a field goal late in the game, I'm putting Adam Reynolds in front of everybody. So that's a concern as to how much he's going to contribute in that department next week. And whilst Cody Walker did a great job of kicking in general play, it's not the same, and especially forcing restarts and those kind of things. It's an important week for the groin of Adam Reynolds and for the South Sydney team and supporters.
It is very important week for Adam Reynolds' groin. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking about what Fatty said about the ice pack the other night. He didn't need an ice pack, he needed 2 cubes. It wouldn't be a grand final week without an injury crisis, Pete. I thought Damien Cook was very good.
I thought both hookers were wonderful over the weekend, and because there was so much fatigue in both games, Api Coruscant came into his own, and so did this man, Damien Cook. I think probably his most involved performance in the second half of the season, and was a real threat out of dummy half. And again, we're going to see a knock 'em down, drag 'em out grand final, and the input of the hookers is going to be so important. You can't just have be concentrating on what your 7, 6 and 1 does. You've got to have a dimension out of dummy half that's a threat to the opposition, and Coruscant and Damien Cook are both very, very capable of doing that. As Brad Fittler pointed out, if you have a look at both the hookers, they're both origin hookers, and the same applies for the halves pairings as well. Plenty of experience there.
Disappointing way for Manly to end their campaign. In fact, they probably haven't been at their best throughout the finals, have they? They played a vastly under-strength Roosters team and put a score on them, but they were disappointing against Melbourne, and this was far from their best. Yeah,
I think they paid the price. When you get to these games, your first 20, 25 minutes is absolutely crucial. You can find yourself in trouble, both physically with how the game's going, but also on the scoreboard. And I thought Manly did in 2 of those games. They just didn't get it right. They were their own worst enemies. And against the quality of these teams, then, if you look up after 20 minutes and it's 0-0, then you're in the game. And Manly on a couple of occasions, it was nothing like that. Yeah,
and obviously Tom Trbojević's influence was curbed here once again.
Yes, and it was very similar to the way that Melbourne dealt with him by... he had a couple of opportunities, but... this is where you want Tom Trbojević to be getting the football. Again, we showed this a couple of weeks ago. 10, 15 metres out from his own line with a brick wall in front, getting driven backwards. That takes Trbojević out of the game. Good, busy defence, especially when he gets involved close to the play the ball, and they handle it well. Trbojević is such a great player that he still caused them some concern on a couple of occasions, but... that's how you deal with Tom Trbojević. You give him the football 5 metres out from his own line with 13 players in front of him.
All right, down to 2. Panthers versus Rabbitohs. South's second grand final appearance in 50 years. And the Panthers, back-to-back grand finals. They were beaten by 6 last year. Will they win it on Sunday?
Well, if we're talking history, I'm going back to 1991, where Penrith got beaten that first year and learnt from that, and they won the next year. I think that will be the case. I think the disappointment of last year will be a huge motivation for them, but I just think they're a better football team. Ivan Cleary has made the fact that so many of his players now have played bigger games during the course of the season now in finals and in Origin. I think that puts them in really good stead. They're the best defensive team in the competition. That's what wins you the game.
Yeah. Let's look at your MVPs for this year now. It's the easiest decision of all time. What am I saying? It took you a lot of homework. What are you talking about? There's only one.
Mate, where you go, I follow. I'll support you down to
seriously.
I couldn't go past Tom Trbojević. He only played 15 games before finals football. still finished the year with 28 tries and had the most profound effect on matches of any play this year. And when you consider how good someone like James Tedesco has been wearing the same number, just shows what a wonderful season Tom Trbojevic had, despite the fact that it was kind of only half a year through injury. But just, he's a freak of nature, really.
Yeah.
The size, the strength, the power he plays with, his involvement in all areas of the field, not just sweeping around, but through the middle there. He's just... Well, Paul Borton, and I think others have come out and said that by the end of his career at Manly, he'll be the best player they produced. And when you consider the likes of Bob Fulton played there and Graham Eady played there and, you know, Des Hasler, the wonderful players that they produced, if Tom's the best of those, then he will have the career that we've kind of all predicted.
What might have taken a little bit more consideration is the most improved player of the year. Who have you come up with?
Came up with a Parramatta player, Isaiah Papali'i,
Oh, yeah.
who joined from the Warriors, and he played, you know, some first grade, but it got to the stage where he wasn't a regular starter for the Warriors in a side that wasn't playing finals football, which is not a great sign of where your career's headed. And I think he made the change because he needed one and realised that his game wasn't improving where he was, starting to lose a little bit of joy. So he came to a club that gave him an opportunity and he started on the bench and he started playing minimum minutes to the stage where he was a regular run-on player, playing 80 every week. And we saw what a try scorer that he was as well. He had a phenomenal year. He was the most improved in regards to the fact that his career just was stalled and now he's a quality player. And if you have a look at the RLP A team...
He's in the side.
He's in the side.
Yeah.
So it wasn't unnoticed by his opponents and his teammates as to just what a great year he had. He was nominated as one of the 2 best second rowers in the competition by everybody he played against.
In a hot field of second rowers.
Exactly,
too.
yeah. So wonderful season for him and a great piece of recruitment from the Parramatta club, giving him an opportunity, which he obviously grabbed with both hands.
Now, Rookie of the Year, toss of the coin job?
Yeah, look, Sam Walker was wonderful, but I just thought Reece Walsh coming in and playing Origin first year.
Well, nearly playing Origin.
Selected for Origin, sorry, I meant to say. But coming in and, you know, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck looking at him and saying, well, hang on, I'm not going to be here for much longer. This kid needs to be out the back learning straight away. So, yeah, I thought he had a fantastic season. To go from Brisbane to the Warriors and play first grade in that same year, I think everybody could just see the talent there. And when you've got talent like that, it's often undeniable and had to be given the run. And again, he was that good that Queensland called upon him, you know, going into that final game, despite the fact he wasn't able to play.
Big career ahead for Reece Walsh. Grand final week, big week for you. Just measure your preparation.
You've
got to peak on grand final day, and then you're done.
No. Look, I've peaked every week. I don't think Grand Final Day shall be any different.
You've been peaking for 30 years.
I love Grand Final week. Interesting to see. I hope that the players get to enjoy it as much as what they would normally do if they're back in their own communities. Like for South to be walking through Redfern and seeing what goes on there in the murals, and for Penrith, you know, how it would be out in the Golden West. I hope they get that kind of enjoyment because it should be the best week of your life. If you win the game, then it is. But it's nice to really...
If you win the game the week after, is the best week of your life.
Well, that too. Well, no, grand finals are that good. It's the next couple of months that'll like that. So, yeah, I really hope in the new COVID environment and the way that the game has been played in north of the border for the last 6 months, that they still get to savour what grand final week is all about. And I think they will. And I think the coaches will make sure that they do enjoy it because that's a part of everything. That's you play better if you've had a good week and enjoyed it.
We'll be back next week for the last Sterlo's Wrap with cakes and streamers and balloons and all sorts of things.
We're going to peak.
Sterlo will be at his absolute best. Enjoy grand final week. We'll see you next week.